Hey guys, welcome back to Prehistoric Life Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Crawford, and today we're going to dive right in to our adventure with the historiography of paleontology. So, of course, let's dive in to the obvious thing that started paleontology: the extinction of the dinosaurs. Well, the KT extinction, or the Cretaceous tertiary extinction event. Just fancy names of saying dinosaur extinction. It's when the asteroid, of course, hit near, I think it's the Gulf of Mexico. So, of course, now that we got out of the way. So, let's dive in with some of the obvious things. Save that for later. In ancient times, bear with me, there's some like Greekish names in here. Xenophanes, 570 to 480 BC. Oh gosh. Herodontus, 484 to 425 BC. Man, why these ancient Greek people gotta have all these strange names, man? Eratosthenes, 276 to 194 BC. And Strabo, 64 BC to 2480, wrote about fossils of marine organisms indicating that land was once underwater. The ancient Chinese considered them to be dragon bones and documented them as such. So there are some indications of ancient, quote unquote, paleontology. They just didn't know it as such. During the Middle Ages, fossils were discovered by Persian naturalist Ibn Sina, known as, oh gosh, Avicenna. Look, I'm going to struggle with some of these names. Just bear with me. Where was I? Known as Avicenna in Europe, in the book of Healing in 1027, which proposed a theory of petrified fluids with Albert of Saxony. That Albert of Saxony would elaborate on in the 14th century. The Chinese naturalist Xin Kuo, I think I'm pronouncing that right. Please don't come hating at me. I'm just trying to get this right. In 1031 to 1095, would propose a theory of climate change based on evidence of petrified bamboo. Where was I? After Charles Darwin published on the origin of species in 1859, 54, I'm pretty sure. Much of the focus of paleontology shifted on understanding evolutionary paths, including human evolution and evolutionary theories. During the Age of Reason, fundamental change in philosophy were reflected in an analysis of fossils in 1655. Please bear with me for like the third time on these names. Anathenasus Kircher, or Kinnocher maybe, attributed giant bones to extinct race of giant humans in his Mundus Subterraneus. So, let me break that down for those of you who don't quite understand. So, in ancient times, Greek people, the Greeks, known for all their philosophy and technology and humanity and all that. I'm not using this. I'm going to use something else that's a lot better. use this bear claw. So the Greek people were like, whoa, we found these big bones under the water that used to be underwater. Wow, we found and discovered bones. And that mostly indicated that there was once land where it used to be water. And the ancient Chinese found them and were like, whoa, dragons are real. What is going on here? Dragons must be real, and these clearly have to be dragons. There was a Chinese naturalist, Xin Kuo, the one that was easiest to pronounce, maybe, said that there was climate change based on petrified bamboo. Charles Darwin, when he was writing about his finches, found some big bones that he thought were marine organisms that we now know are not. They are terrestrial organisms. And he wrote about them. So let's get into during the age of philosophers, they reflected on fossil samples and fossils that they found. And they were like, oh, maybe these. And one dude was like, maybe these are like ancient people, like giants that exist. So let's get on the basis of actual paleontology. Down here, I don't know if y'all can see this. Oop, knocked my phone off my desk. I got something written. I got stuff written all over this paper. There are 3 types of paleontology. Vertebrate paleontology, study of vertebrate fossils from primitive fish to reptiles to flying animals to mammals. Basically, the paleontology that we talk about that we all know and love. Hang on there. Let me... Basically, the study of anything with one of these. If you don't know what this is a vertebrate. This is a vertebrae. Basically, the study of anything with one of these. So that includes dinosaurs, marine organisms, flying creatures, mammals, not humans. That's something different. There's human paleontology or paleoanthropology. Anthropology is the study of like human science and all that. So that is the study of prehistoric humans and proto-human fossils. So that's like when the people yell about evolution of humans, the missing link, that's what they're talking about. And there is taphonomy, the study of the process of decay, preservation, and the formation of fossils in general. So, for those of you who do not know how fossils are born, I say born. An animal dies. You get a dead animal. Over millions and billions and trillions of years, not trillions yet, but mainly millions of years, after hundreds of thousands of millions of years, the animal decays. Soil and rock and earth. So this is the animal. It buries itself over the animal and slowly compresses it. It'll compress the animal. I'm not actually going to do that because I don't want to break this. It'll compress it and it will make an imprint and the actual bone will stay there. And over time, it compresses and then you have your fossil. You dig it up. So let's talk about the actual formation of paleontology. It was founded by Georges Cuvier, a French naturalist and zoologist, sometimes referred to as the founding father of paleontology. I just realized I forgot one of my quotation marks. Oopsie whoopsie. He was born on the 23rd of August in Montpellier. Oh gosh, Montpellier. I'm trying that. It was located near the Yarra Mountains, and he was born in 1769. He died the 13th of May, 1832, in Paris, France. And between that time, he discovered fossils, and he took them together. Wow, I just dropped that. That was depressing. He brought them together, and he studied them, and he created animals, and he founded stuff. I say stuff, but he is now known as the main father of paleontology. So people have collected fossils and samples of old dead things, and they're like, wow, these things look cool. As we talked about, the Greeks had their fossils, the ancient Chinese had theirs. During the Age of Reason, they discovered them, but they didn't know what it was. They didn't study it. They didn't actually care about it. I say that loosely. They were like probably studying it a little bit. But like the Chinese were just like, these are dragons. They, in the Age of Reason, they're like, these are giant humans. And the ancient Greeks were like, well, it's just a marine organism, probably something dead that exists out there. So they didn't know that these animals were extinct, and that the world would shift, and that things change. By the early 1840s, much of the geological timescales had been developed. In 1841, John Phillips formally divided the geological columns into the three major eras: the Paleozoic, the Mesozoic, and the Cenozoic, based on the sharp breaks in the fossil records. So for those who do not know, these are not eras. These are time periods. But the main part that we study, Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous period, are the Mesozoic. Paleozoic, if I'm not mistaken, let me look this up real quick. I didn't do full research long ago. Was the Paleozoic era? So that was okay. Yeah. Paleozoic comes before that. So before the Mesozoic, you have, it's all the way down here. This is see it right there, Paleozoic era. So that is, I can't show this full thing right now, can I? All of this right up into the Triassic. That is the Mesozoic era. And I gotta move this real quick. And this, what was it? Cenozoic era comes after all of that. So this is all coming after Cenozoic. So that's your time of the early humans, your mammoths, your terror birds, your manatees, smilodon, whatever, yada yada, dolphins, all that thing. Those existed during that time, but that's when they're most famous, if that makes sense. So he broke it up. So you have Paleozoic, which comes first, then you have Mesozoic, which is the dinosaurs, and then you have Cenozoic, which comes after that all. That's like the rise of the mammals and all that. Where was I? So John Phillips was born the 25th of December on Christmas in 1800 at Marden, Wilstron. He died 24th of April, 1874. He died at Yeah, he died in the 24th of April, 1874. He died at All Souls. He dined at All Souls College. Wow, I'm having a goof moment. He deaned at All Souls College. My bad. But on leaving, he slipped and fell down a flight of stone stairs. And he died the next day. So let me break that down. George Cuvier is the man who discovered paleontology. He got the fossils, he studied them, he took his time, and that was what he studied. And he passed away in Paris, France. John Phillips passed away falling down a flight of stone stairs. Can't say that for some reason. Fell down a flight of stone stairs, and he was the one who discovered the time map, whatever you call it. The what is the actual name for the geological columns of the Paleozoic, Mesozoic, and Cenozoic? And he died falling down a flight of stone stairs. When both of his parents, this is also still about John Phillips. When both of his parents died in 1808, he was supported by his remarkable uncle, Williams Smith. He was a largely self-taught surveyor who spent his income on his passion of fossils and geology. Smith ultimately became known as the father of English geology. So John Phillips became the father of geology, and he probably ended up working with Georges Cuvier, and geology and paleontology are like that. You got archaeology, geology, and paleontology. They go hand in hand. You have archaeology, which is the humans. Archaeology is human artifacts. Anthropology is the actual humans. Paleontology is what comes before the humans. So that's the dinosaurs, the mammoth, pterosaurs, yada, yada, yada. All that. And then geology is just the study of like rocks and the formation of landmass and how that all forms. So now I'm sure all of you hardcore paleontologist fans want to know all about this. I've done a few shorts on it about the Bone Wars. Yeah. I'm bringing up the Bone Wars. It went from 1877 to 1892, and it had more than 136 new species discovered. Edward Drinker Cope and Othniel Charles Marsh. Those were the two major people in the Bone Wars. And it was the most famous example of mass paleontology. These paleontologists used their wealth and influence to finance their own expeditions and procure services and dinosaur bones from fossil hunters. So they basically went around, they were like, we're these famous paleontologists, and we want your help. Give us some money so we can go dig up these big old monsters and study them and show you what life was before humans. And people were like, whoa, this sounds insane. This isn't like a mass thing that's really happened before. I mean, of course, there are major examples of paleontology before, but so they went around, they went, you're a fossil hunter. Here is so and so amount of money. Come dig for me. And those people were like, $5,000. Probably not that much back in those days. It's probably way less. It's probably like $500, but that's besides the point. They're like, $500. All right. I'll come dig with you. All of my fossils that I find are yours. And they went around and they got famous off of this, and they used that to fund it. By the end, both men had exhausted their funds in the pursuit of paleontological supremacy. So these two men were like, I'm the better. So you have one, you have the other. They're like, I'm the better paleontologist. No, I'm the better paleontologist. So you have Edward Drinker Cope and you have Othniel Charles Marsh. I'll call him Cope and Marsh for short. So Marsh was arguing about how he was the better paleontologist, and then Marsh comes along and he's like, no, I'm better. And they went head to head, and they went constantly. There are counts of them sending basically soldiers to the other's dig site to just shoot people and steal their fossils. They were like, this is my fossil now. And they discovered like was 136 new species, and then people were like, okay, we're basically paying you to shoot people and steal fossils and dig up fossils. This isn't really a good source of money. So they ended up losing funding, and the Bone Wars ended in 1892. So Megalosaurus is thought to be the first dinosaur discovered in scientific literature, but based on fossils uncovered in the 17th century, it could have been known by different names. So Megalosaurus I did an episode last week on Megalosaurus. It was thought to be the first dinosaur discovered. There were fossils discovered, but you have like petrified wood, like I talked about earlier with the Chinese guy, Shin Kun, petrified bamboo. You have like shells and other just random bones that they found and dug up. But this was the first dinosaur that they actually got together, studied, and they were like, this is a dinosaur. This is what exists. This is how it is. This is a dinosaur. This is what we're talking about. You have they're like before they were like, oh, it's a vertebrate. It could belong to a snake or a cow or an elephant or a pig or a blah 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 blah. But they didn't actually go, we found this like 50 meters below the surface of the earth. This is from a species that isn't alive anymore. Megalosaurus was the first dinosaur that they actually did that with. The first dinosaur fossils with structures that could be considered feathers were found in the 1990s by an American paleontologist, John Ostorms, who discovered with the discovery of Deinonychus, an active. So Deinonychus was discovered. It was a sophisticated bird-like predator that turned the old stereotype on their heads. So I can actually finally show this off now. Dusty. Old dinosaurs used to be like that. They were more upright, completely scaled, not a feather on them. They were lizards. In fact, dinosaurs like terrible lizard. Well, that was flipped on its head, and they were like, whoa, wait a minute. We are finding the imprint of feathers. Maybe dinosaurs are not reptile-like, but more bird-like. And in the 1990s, they discovered, I don't know, I did do an episode on it. They discovered Deinonychus. This bad boy. I did Velociraptor. What was that? Wednesday. But Deinonychus was the one that they discovered and went, hold up. Wait a minute. There are feather imprints. Something's not right. Maybe they're not 100% lizard-like, but more bird-like. So that goes in the 1990s. John Ostorms finds this sophisticated, more bird-like creature, bird-like predator, and they're like, this is wrong. Because originally I showed that thing with the Megalosaurus, where they were like, all right, it walks on all fours like this. Boom, 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 boom. Like, it's got 4 legs, and it walks around on all fours. And then they were like, well, some of these don't really make sense. The front two legs don't make sense to be like this. So then they had this thing where they're like, all right, it's a reptile, it's up, and it's got weird air holes or whatever. And they're lizards. They're 100% lizards. Then later on, they discovered that they weren't completely upright like that. They were more down. Like Big Al here. Like Al here. I call him Big Al because of the balder Big Al. One of the greatest dinosaur medias, in my opinion. I love that story. They discovered that they were more like you look at them, like look at their postures. This guy has his body up more, while this guy is like that. It's that versus that. That's all I'm saying. Please don't fall out. And then they discovered Deinonychus, and then they're like, "Whoa, this guy has feathers. Maybe they're not all reptiles, but some of them are more bird-like." And then this new theory of dinosaurs with feathers come along. And then originally they were like, all dinosaurs had to have feathers then, but no, that doesn't quite make sense. And if you watched my episode with Dr. Brian, Dr. BC, Mr. Fossil Crate himself, please go check that out. That was an awesome interview. We mainly talked about dinosaur lips, but we also touched on dinosaur feathers a little bit. They were like, well, not all dinosaurs had feathers. So things like ceratopsians, which are, hang on, try not to knock everything off of my shelf. These bad boys. And sauropods, which are the long neck critters. I say critters, but they're like the size of a house. Like these. These two were like, whoa, there's no way these things had feathers. That doesn't make sense. And they came across this guy and they're like, well, this thing's too big. Having feathers would make it overheat and die because it's got like this, since it's so big, it has like a lot of bone mass, a lot of fat mass, a lot of muscle mass. They're like, there's no way it would have feathers. So then they discovered that like T-Rex and Velociraptor, T-Rex wasn't 100% feathered. That's the thing. People think it's either 100% feathers or no feathers. It's either feathers or this. That's what they're thinking. But that would be wrong. Yes, they were feathered and they had quills and things like that, but they weren't 100% covered in feathers. That would be an evolutionary disadvantage. And large theropods, unless, think of it more like an evolutionary standard. We talked about lips with Dr. BC, where some dinosaurs had lips, some didn't. They didn't need them. Some dinosaurs needed feathers, but let's talk about Al here. He lives in a desert. And he's this giant hulking beast. He probably didn't have feathers. But the little velociraptor that uses it to control his body temperature probably did have feathers. So it's like an evolutionary step, like Charles Darwin would talk about. But big dino, this guy didn't have feathers. This guy could have had feathers, but they were not all 100% reptile, is what he's talking about. So paleontology has come a long way from these weird fossil structures and shells and random pieces of weird looking wood that they find hidden underground to these giant beasts. And if we're determining if they had feathers, so let's talk about things that make a dinosaur. There are 3 things that make a dinosaur. Is that they could possibly be, let me find this real quick. So the 3 major things that make a dinosaur, well, the one major thing, is that they're reptile-ish, bird-like. They're most of them are warm-blooded. I'm gonna go with 4 things. Their hips are under their legs. That was a new evolutionary thing that made them unique. Ours now are under our legs. Your legs are under your hips. So their legs. So let's look at this bad boy. So his hips are here. His legs go down instead of out and down, like previous reptiles. And the last thing, the most important thing, is that they're cool to study. So most of them are warm-blooded. They're lizard, reptile-like, and their legs are under their hips. So pterosaurs are not dinosaurs. Their hips, I'm pretty sure, are not under their legs, and they're not warm, cold-blooded, or they're not warmish-blooded. Most dinosaurs are warm-blooded. There are a few that are cold-blooded. That's besides the point. So that's what makes a dinosaur. So paleontology has come a long way from random vertebrate, could be from a modern thing, to look at this thing. Its hips are under its legs. It's warm-blooded most of the time. I know some are cold-blooded. Don't come yelling at me. I'm aware. And that it might have had feathers. So this massive gap that spanned literal centuries, like 2 to 3 to possibly even now, thinking back, like at least 10 centuries, maybe even 10,000 years, because some of these people are from like the Shinkon 1031. I mean, that's at least 10,000 years, and it's come so far that, I mean, there's more than this. I've dumbed it down. I've taken the most important stuff and talked about it. Most important stuff, in my opinion. But that's just me. Like, and the dictionary definition is a branch of science concerned with fossil animals, and plants. That's just the definition of paleontology for any of you who are asking. But it has grown vastly. And I personally look forward to seeing it grow more and seeing what they discover and seeing how they find. Also, it is fair to mention we did have like a mostly complete Spinosaurus, but it was blown up in a bombing in Poland, if I'm not mistaken, during World War II. Tragedies of war, I'm aware. But paleontology has changed our sight on evolution and how we are here now. And personally, I enjoy it. This is just me. Because these monsters, these beasts that existed long ago, that we don't actually 100% know what they look like. That you have to find them and discover them and put them together and figure it out. And it's open to interpretation. I could sit here and talk about dinosaur clads and evolutionary trees, but I'm not going to. That's not what this is about. I could do a whole episode on the time column, on the geological column, but I'm not. I might do that. Now that I'm saying that out loud, I might do that. But you have to find these things, and that they are so different. They're so unique. They each have their own story. And that's just something that I personally find that has gotten me into paleontology and why I love this study so much. But I hope you all listen to this and that you take the time to learn about paleontology and that you actually go out and research this for yourself. And that you don't just stop with my video. You use my video as a basis for research, but that you go out and research this yourself and learn more about it. Because I enjoyed making this video and I love paleontology and I want more people to know about it. Because, I mean, most people ask me, they're like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I'm like, a paleontologist. And they're like, whoa, what's that? And I'm like, I could sit here and talk to you about the entire science and the evolution of how the study came together. And I want people to know about this. This is why I started this podcast, is I want to spread my knowledge on these beasts that we don't know everything about. I want to spread my research from them, what I have discovered from them. And I have these cool fossils that I want to show off to y'all. That I want to be, look at this. Look how cool this looks. Look at these ancient beasts that we don't 100% know about. Look at them. Look how, look at the Triceratops skull. Like, I have a mini one of these. You're not telling me that if you found this thing, you'd be like, what in the world is that? You don't know what a Triceratops is. You're like, what in the world is that weird creature that just exists? Like, I love studying these beasts, these monsters, these creatures that existed before us that we didn't get to see with our own eyes. And I want to spread my knowledge about them. And I thank y'all for the ones who are listening. But this was a nice change of pace. I talked about how the science itself evolved and not just how these beasts existed. So, remember, guys, please keep it prehistoric, keep it real. Remember to follow on Instagram and on YouTube. Remember, YouTube gets early access. I say that for those who don't know. I'm just going to post this video immediately after I'm done editing it. And those of you who go and check out the YouTube channel will get immediate access to this. But for the rest of you, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed. I'm your host, Eric Crawford. I'm going to give y'all like 5 seconds to look at these things. I love Big Al. I love my Triceratops. I love Sarah. Although I do have a Ceratosaurus, so this will probably find a different name. And you have Brachiosaurus, discovered by Sir Riggs himself, by Riggs. But there's your time. Remember, I'm your host, Eric Crawford, and I love guiding you through the tales of dinosaurs themselves.